The 1960s was a golden era of music, a vibrant explosion of talent that changed the world forever. But behind the dazzling lights and screaming fans, a dark shadow loomed over some of its brightest rising stars. That's why today we are looking at 10 forgotten 1960s prodigies who died too young, before reaching their peak. These are the untold stories of incredible talent stolen from us by bizarre coincidences, unsolved mysteries, and relentless industry pressures. Before we dive into these shocking mysteries, take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story. You won't believe the dark secrets hidden behind these classic hits that still play on the radio today. Let's get started. Number 10. Eddie Cochran. Imagine having the music world in the palm of your hands at 21. That was the reality for the rockabilly pioneer who defined teenage rebellion with an infectious guitar riff. He possessed a captivating stage presence that rivaled the biggest names of his generation. But beneath the confident exterior, a chilling premonition was eating away at his peace of mind. Following the loss of his close friends Buddy Holly and Ritchie Valens in an aviation accident, a profound sense of doom settled over the young musician. He became convinced that he was destined to meet a tragic, premature end. This overwhelming fear paralyzed him, making him desperately want to quit the exhausting life on the road and focus on the safety of the recording studio. Despite his anxieties, the financial pressure and contractual obligations of the music business forced him to embark on a grueling tour across the United Kingdom in the spring of 1960. The live shows were spectacular, but the dark shadows were closing in. In the late hours of a fateful April night, while traveling in a hired taxi through the pitch-dark roads of Chippenham, disaster struck. The vehicle blew a rear tire, lost control, and crashed into a concrete lamppost. His terrifying premonition had become a grim reality, permanently cutting short a brilliant career. The suddenness of his fate was a wake-up call to the industry. But while his exit was straightforward, the abrupt downfall of our next prodigy remains one of the most disturbing unsolved conspiracies in rock history. Number 9. Bobby Fuller. When a Texas talent finally breaks into the mainstream, you expect a long career filled with chart-topping records. He had just scored a massive international hit, blending raw rock energy with catchy pop melodies. He was ambitious and seemingly on the fast track to becoming a legend. But merely months after achieving his dream, he was shockingly discovered lifeless at 23. The unsettling circumstances of his sudden passing are what elevate this tragedy into a chilling mystery. He was found trapped inside his mother's parked car right outside his Hollywood apartment, and the details were a surreal nightmare. The vehicle's doors were shut, and his lifeless body was inexplicably drenched in gasoline. Almost immediately, the local police rushed to close the investigation. They labeled the horrific scene as a situation where he simply took his own life, later loosely amending it to a bizarre accident. But the people closest to him fiercely rejected this simplified narrative. Dark whispers of a sinister cover-up began to circulate through the underbelly of Los Angeles. Strong rumors surfaced about his dangerous entanglement with organized crime figures who had infiltrated the lucrative music business. Close friends pointed out that he had recently attempted to forcefully break a shady recording contract, potentially angering powerful individuals. Investigators mysteriously ignored crucial evidence, including the verified fact that the car had not been parked there just an hour prior. The objective truth was hastily buried. While his dark truth was shoved under the rug, our next star was forced to hide a tragic secret right in front of an oblivious public. Number 8. Tammi Terrell. She possessed an angelic, powerhouse voice that quickly became the emotional heartbeat of Motown Records in the late 1960s. Teaming up with the legendary Marvin Gaye, she successfully formed one of the most iconic vocal duos in the history of popular music. They seemed absolutely unstoppable, consistently projecting a curated image of pure romantic chemistry that captivated audiences worldwide. However, behind her dazzling smile and flawless stage performances, a terrifying invisible physical enemy was quietly destroying her. The shocking reality of her rapidly deteriorating condition brutally shattered the glamorous illusion during a highly anticipated live concert in Virginia. Without any warning, she unexpectedly collapsed right into Marvin's arms, directly in the middle of a hit song. She was tragically suffering from an aggressive brain tumor, a horrifying diagnosis that should have immediately stopped the relentless machine of the music industry. Instead, the overwhelming pressure to keep producing lucrative hits only intensified. Even as her health rapidly deteriorated and she courageously underwent multiple grueling surgeries, the powerful label desperately needed to keep the profitable duo squarely in the spotlight. Heartbreaking stories eventually emerged from the recording studio, detailing how she tragically had to record her demanding vocals while permanently confined to a medical wheelchair. There are even persistent rumors that another famous singer was secretly brought in to dub her final vocals because she was simply too weak. She bravely fought an invisible disease until she lost her battle at 24, a victim of an industry that refused to let her rest. She battled an illness with immense grace, but the next artist was entirely consumed by the personal demons he recklessly invited in. Number 7. Frankie Lymon. Long before manufactured pop sensations dominated the global charts, there was a revolutionary talent who practically invented the concept of the teenage music idol. With a singing voice made of pure gold and an infectious charm, he was miraculously a wealthy millionaire by the time he was barely 13 years old. He was the undisputed star of his successful vocal group, effortlessly commanding massive crowds and appearing on prestigious national television broadcasts. But his unprecedented meteoric rise was a deeply tragic, textbook example of how the ruthless entertainment machine can exploit and ultimately destroy a vulnerable child. Without proper guidance, he was aggressively thrust into a dangerous adult world filled with relentless demands, shady financial managers, and heavy adult temptations. By the time he finally reached his later teenage years, his famous angelic soprano voice naturally began to drop, and the cruel, fickle industry that once adored him abruptly and coldly turned its back. The harsh transition from a beloved child star to an ignored adult artist completely shattered his delicate world. Stripped of his massive fortune by greedy executives and desperately struggling to recapture his faded glory, his personal life completely spiraled into absolute chaos. He became entangled in severe legal troubles, including shocking bigamy scandals involving 3 entirely different women who all claimed to be his legal wife. But the darkest shadow looming over his tragic existence was a severe dependence on illicit substances. Despite numerous heartbreaking attempts to clean up his troubled life, the profound pain was simply too heavy. He was found lifeless in his grandmother's empty apartment at 25, defeated by his addictions. He lost his bitter battle in total isolation, but the next brilliant talent was violently snatched from the world in a terrifying repetition of history. Number 6. David Box. In the unforgiving realm of early rock and roll, successfully replacing a genuinely legendary frontman is a monumental task that very few artists can hope to survive. Yet, when an optimistic 21-year-old musician bravely stepped up to officially take over the vocal duties for the Crickets, following the devastating loss of Buddy Holly, the industry was genuinely astonished. This young Texan artist possessed a singing voice that was eerily, almost supernaturally identical to his revered predecessor. He flawlessly captured the exact same youthful twang, the infectious rhythmic energy, and the natural ability to craft unforgettable melodies. For a brief shining moment, it seemed as if a miraculous musical reincarnation had mysteriously occurred, offering the grieving band a second chance. He recorded with the group, toured extensively, and even began building a highly promising solo career. But what makes this specific historical story truly terrifying is the bizarre, deeply chilling supernatural coincidence that ultimately violently sealed his inescapable fate. On a crisp October afternoon in 1964, he casually boarded a very small, privately chartered airplane immediately after completing a local performance. Just minutes after taking off into the clear sky, something went catastrophically wrong high in the air. The small, fragile aircraft violently plummeted directly from the sky, crashing into the unforgiving ground and tragically leaving absolutely no survivors whatsoever. In a sickening, unexplainable twist of fate that still constantly sends intense shivers down the spines of seasoned music historians, he tragically perished in the exact same horrifying manner at the exact same incredibly young age of 22, as the very legend he was hired to replace. The dark parallels were so precise that it felt like a cursed script. Seeing a terrifying lightning bolt strike twice is horrifying, but what happens when a foundational pillar crumbles on the most important night of their lives? Number 5. Rudy Lewis. Stepping into the bright spotlight to confidently lead one of the most beloved, influential vocal groups of the 20th century obviously requires a very special kind of musical magic. As the deeply soulful primary voice of the Drifters, he possessed a smooth, emotive tone that perfectly captured the romantic yearning of the era. He was the steady, dependable, soulful anchor of a massive group that was constantly redefining rhythm and blues, expertly guiding them through a massive string of culturally defining hits. His immense vocal talent was the crucial glue holding the frequently changing lineup securely together, and the excited band was on the very verge of finally recording their biggest masterpiece. The expensive studio was completely booked, the musicians were totally ready, and the anticipation was extremely high for the session scheduled the next morning. However, when the morning sun finally rose, the crucial lead singer was nowhere to be found. After numerous frantic phone calls went completely unanswered, he was tragically discovered lifeless inside his Harlem hotel room at the incredibly young age of 27. The tragic timing was nothing short of devastating, instantly plunging the massive band into chaos just mere hours before a historic recording session. But the genuine true mystery constantly lies in the deeply conflicting, highly debated reports surrounding his sudden demise. The local authorities heavily suggested an accidental overdose involving illicit substances. Yet, protective close friends fiercely denied he ever had a severe substance problem, strongly pointing instead to a completely silent, undiagnosed eating disorder that ultimately caused fatal asphyxiation during his sleep. The official medical records stubbornly remained highly vague, permanently leaving behind a thick cloud of deep suspicion. His extremely sudden exit left his desperately scrambling bandmates totally alone, but our next brilliant prodigy deliberately walked away from the biggest band in global history. Number 4. Stuart Sutcliffe. Long before the screaming fans, the perfectly tailored suits, and the global hysteria that defined the historic British invasion, there was a brooding, stylish bassist who helped create the very soul of the most famous band in history. He was the original bass player for the Beatles, an enigmatic, artistic individual who boldly brought an avant-garde visual aesthetic to the iconic group during their rough early days performing in the red light district of Hamburg. He was John Lennon's best friend, heavily influencing their world-famous signature haircuts and their rebellious leather-clad rock image. Yet, unlike his fiercely ambitious bandmates, his true passion lay deeply rooted in abstract painting, not just popular music. Driven by a profound love and a desire to pursue fine arts, he made the unthinkable decision to abandon the band right before they achieved global fame. He bravely chose true love and the quiet canvas over massively sold-out stadiums, a deeply poetic decision that was brutally cut short. At the tender age of 21, he shockingly collapsed from a massive, fatal brain hemorrhage, tragically passing away directly in the arms of the very woman he loved. While his sad passing was officially ruled a natural medical tragedy, a very dark, highly controversial historical theory has circulated for numerous decades. Many respected historians strongly suspect that his ultimate fatal head injury actually originated from a vicious street fight outside a rough musical venue in England months prior. Some extremely persistent rumors strongly suggest that John Lennon himself was physically involved in a highly violent altercation with him, an argument that secretly haunted Lennon for the rest of his life. The genuine truth remains an intense debate, but the unpredictable bad luck of our next artist feels ripped from a horror movie. Number 3. Martin Lamble. When we enthusiastically think of the incredibly influential folk rock movement rapidly exploding in the late 1960s, we naturally picture highly peaceful acoustic melodies. But the intensely rhythmic backbone of this revolutionary sound in Britain was a young teenage drumming prodigy who possessed a highly complex talent far beyond his remarkably young age. At just 19 years old, he was already considered a masterful percussionist, fiercely driving the unique sound of Fairport Convention with an energetic and intricate style. Seasoned music journalists passionately hailed him as the absolute future of all British drumming. He was joyfully living the ultimate rock dream, traveling across the country, playing prestigious sold-out venues, and constantly pushing the deep musical boundaries. But the totally unforgiving, inherently dangerous nature of a physically exhausting touring schedule permanently holds hidden, lethal dangers that enthusiastic artists rarely see approaching. After successfully playing a deeply triumphant live show, the tightly knit band piled directly into their cramped transit van for a completely routine overnight drive down a very dark, winding motorway. In the dead of night, total disaster violently struck with absolutely zero warning whatsoever. The heavy musical equipment unexpectedly shifted, the highly exhausted driver immediately lost control, and the fragile vehicle aggressively barrel-rolled entirely down the pitch-dark embankment. The sheer, terrifying cruelty of the icy highway instantly claimed the promising life of the young prodigy, completely devastating the traumatized remaining band members and halting their creative momentum. It was a terrifying reminder of how vulnerable these musicians truly were. The cold asphalt violently claimed him without a single second of warning. But our next absolute legend was slowly and painfully consumed by the destructive shadows of the London rock scene. Number 2, Dicky Pride. In the fiercely competitive early days of the wild British rock scene, there was a highly dynamic vocalist who aggressively commanded the stage with such deeply explosive physical energy that he quickly earned the electrifying nickname, the Sheik of Sheik. Influential insiders firmly believed he effortlessly possessed far more raw, staggering natural vocal talent than massively famous superstars like Tom Jones. He had a deeply gritty, incredibly soulful voice that could easily tear the absolute roof off any packed concert venue and quickly became a staple of national television broadcasts. He was heavily promoted as the absolute next big global thing, heavily backed by the most powerful managers in the country. However, the incredibly lucrative music industry is a notoriously brutal machine that quickly disposes of anything it cannot easily control. Beneath his highly dynamic, fiercely energetic stage persona, he tragically suffered from severe mental health struggles that unfortunately made him incredibly difficult to manage. Instead of compassionately offering him the critical medical help he so desperately needed, his highly impatient management team aggressively dropped him, abruptly cutting off his income and essentially blacklisting him from the very industry he helped build. The staggering, highly public fall from grace was unbelievably brutal. Once a highly celebrated television star, he was violently forced into agonizing manual labor, eventually working incredibly deep underground in a completely dark, totally suffocating coal mine just to survive. The profound, inescapable humiliation eventually drove him toward highly dangerous coping mechanisms. He tragically succumbed to a heavy, completely inescapable addiction to illicit substances, eventually losing his deeply troubled life at just 27 in total obscurity. He was ruthlessly chewed up and spit out by the music machine, but the deeply tragic story of our final prodigy involves a highly suffocating pressure she simply could not survive. Number 1. Mary Ann Ganser. They were the absolute, undisputed queens of teenage angst and deeply dramatic rebellion in the mid-1960s. As an incredibly vital member of the Shangri-Las, she directly helped provide the highly haunting, deeply emotional vocal harmonies for cinematic pop masterpieces that completely defined an entire youthful generation. With their highly famous tough girl leather jackets, incredibly dark eye makeup, and dramatic songs about intense heartbreak and total tragedy, they proudly stood in stark contrast to the highly polished pop acts of the era. She was incredibly beautiful, fiercely talented, and practically unconditionally worshipped by millions of devoted teenagers who clearly saw their incredibly turbulent emotions perfectly reflected in her voice. But the terrifying, incredibly dark irony was that the deeply tragic themes she beautifully sang about on stage were secretly bleeding into her personal reality. Behind the incredibly thick mascara and perfectly choreographed stage routines, she was heavily buckling under the deeply crushing weight of intense fame, grueling touring schedules, and immense aesthetic pressures. As the massive chart hits began to slowly dry up, and the highly relentless demands of the cruel industry took a deeply severe toll, she completely fell into a very rapid, highly dark decline. The once vibrant girl became increasingly reclusive, heavily surrounded by incredibly persistent industry rumors of deeply severe, unmanageable substance abuse, as she desperately tried to numb her internal pain. Her entirely sudden, deeply shocking passing, at the incredibly tender age of just 22, sent massive shockwaves through the fans. To this very day, the highly exact circumstances of her sudden demise remain heavily shrouded in deep mystery. While the official medical reports safely cited a fully fatal case of viral encephalitis, intense industry whispers fiercely argued she actually succumbed to a deeply tragic accidental substance event, which was hastily covered up to protect the group's legacy. When we excitedly look back at the vibrant cultural explosion of the 1960s, it is incredibly easy to quickly get lost in the brilliant romanticized nostalgia of the iconic era. But these 10 deeply heartbreaking, devastating, untold stories essentially serve as a very dark, incredibly heavy reminder of the immense human cost deeply hidden directly behind the classic music we still passionately love today. We are permanently left with a deeply provocative, haunting question. What precisely could these highly extraordinary musical prodigies have ultimately achieved if they had simply been given considerably more time or the genuinely compassionate support they so desperately needed? Their unique voices may have been violently silenced way too soon, but their undeniable impact on the entire permanent history of modern pop will absolutely echo forever. Which of these tragic, deeply mysterious, untold stories honestly surprised you the absolute most today? Drop your honest thoughts directly down in the comments below. If you found these deeply hidden secrets as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and check out another one of our deep dives right here on the channel. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.